My son-in-law Greg looked me right in the eye and told me my daughter had run off with another man. He said it with a straight face, even managed to squeeze out a tear. But when I went to their farmhouse to pack up her things, I heard a scratching sound coming from behind the heavy oak wardrobe in the master bedroom. I pushed it aside with strength I didn't know I had. And what I found hidden in the wall behind that furniture, it left the police bursting into tears. Why, hello there. I'm glad you've joined me today. If you are listening to my story, please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I always like to see how far these stories travel. My name is Martha. I'm 64 years old, a retired nurse, and I've seen a lot of things in my life, but nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for the horror that unfolded on my own daughter's farm last autumn. It had been 3 weeks since I'd last spoken to Sarah. 3 weeks of calls going straight to voicemail, of texts left unread, but with no reply. That wasn't my Sarah. She called me every Sunday, rain or shine, to tell me about the market, about my granddaughter Lily's latest drawings, about the vegetables she was growing. Sarah was grounded, reliable as the earth she tended. When I finally couldn't take the silence anymore, I drove out to the farm. Greg met me on the porch. He looked too clean, too composed for a man whose wife had just vanished. He gave me this long, sorrowful sigh and told me the story he'd been spinning to everyone else. Martha, she just up and left, he said, shaking his head. Met some guy online, said the farm life wasn't enough for her anymore. Left me and poor Lily behind. I knew it was a lie the moment it left his lips. A mother knows her child. Sarah loved that farm. It had been in our family for 3 generations. And more than anything, she loved her 7-year-old daughter Lily. She would sooner cut off her own arm than abandon that little girl. But I played along. I had to get inside that house. Well then, I said, keeping my voice steady though my heart was hammering against my ribs, I'll just collect some of her things. If she's gone, she won't need them clogging up your closets. Greg hesitated. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Was it fear? But he stepped aside. Sure, Martha, whatever you need, I'll be in the barn. The house felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. It was too quiet. A heavy, suffocating silence hung in the air. Smells of stale coffee and something else. Something metallic like old pennies. I walked through the living room, my nursing instincts on high alert. Things were slightly askew. A rug kicked up at the corner. A vase missing from the mantelpiece. I went up to the master bedroom. It was neat, too neat. Sarah was a bit messy, always leaving books on her bedside table, clothes draped over chairs, but the room looked sterilized. I opened her closet. Her clothes were still there. All of them, even her favorite winter coat, though the October chill was already setting in. Who runs away to start a new life without packing a single bag? I was standing there, clutching one of her sweaters to my chest, trying to fight back the rising panic when I heard it. Scritch, scritch. It was faint. So faint I thought maybe it was mice in the walls. Old farmhouses make noises. I held my breath, straining my ears. Scritch, whimper. My blood ran cold. That wasn't a mouse. That was a human sound. A sound of pure distress. It was coming from behind the massive oak wardrobe that stood against the far wall. It was a beast of a piece of furniture. Something Sarah's grandfather had built, solid and impossibly heavy. I put my ear to the side of the wardrobe. Hello, I whispered. Is someone there? A tiny gasp, then silence. Panic overtook reason. I didn't care about my bad back or my age. I grabbed the corner of that wardrobe and I pulled. I pulled with every ounce of adrenaline that fear for my child could muster. It groaned against the hardwood floor, scraping loudly. I managed to shift it about a foot, just enough to squeeze behind it. There, cut into the drywall, was a rough, jagged hole. It led into the crawl space under the eaves of the roof. It was dark inside, smelling of insulation and dust. I pulled out my phone and shone the flashlight into the hole. 2 terrified eyes reflected the light back at me. It was Lily, my sweet 7-year-old granddaughter. She was curled into a fetal position, wedged between the support beams. She was filthy, her hair matted, her little face streaked with grime and tears. She was clutching something tightly in her hand, Sarah's silver locket, the one she wore every single day. Lily, "Oh my God, sweetie," I cried, dropping to my knees and reaching into the hole. "Come to Grandma. It's okay, baby, it's okay." She flinched away from my touch, pressing herself deeper into the shadows. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, like an animal caught in a trap. She didn't speak. She just let out another one of those heart-wrenching whimpers. I knew I couldn't force her, I had to coax her. "Lily honey, it's Grandma Martha. Nobody is going to hurt you. I'm going to take you out of here. We're going to get some ice cream, remember, like we used to." It took 20 minutes. 20 agonizing minutes of whispering, of pleading, while my mind raced with horror scenarios of how long she had been in there. Finally she crawled toward me inch by inch, until I could grab her under her arms and pull her free. She was featherlight, too light. When I pulled her into the light of the bedroom, I gasped. She was emaciated, dehydrated. How long had my granddaughter been living behind a wall? I didn't wait for Greg. I didn't wait for explanations. I scooped Lily up. She felt so fragile in my arms, like dried leaves, and ran down the stairs and out the front door. I threw her in the back seat of my car, buckling her in with trembling hands. As I sped down the long driveway, I saw Greg coming out of the barn. He looked up, saw my car tearing away, and started running toward us, shouting something I couldn't hear. I didn't stop. I drove like a bat out of hell, straight to the county hospital. The next few hours were a blur of doctors' IVs and police questions. They took Lily into pediatrics immediately. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, signs of prolonged confinement. The words hit me like physical blows. 2 officers, a man and a woman, sat with me in the waiting room. I told them everything. The missing daughter, Greg's lies, the hidden hole in the wall. "We need to speak to the child as soon as she's stable," the female officer said gently. "And we need to find Mr. Greg. He's at the farm," I said, my voice shaking with rage. He knew she was in there. He had to know. Just then the doors to the waiting room burst open. It was Greg. He looked wild, sweating his hair mussed. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" he bellowed, putting on a show for the reception staff. He spotted me and rushed over. "Martha, what the hell did you do? You kidnapped Lily." I stood up, blocking his path. I'm not a big woman, but in that moment I felt 10 feet tall. "You stay away from her, Greg, you monster." He stopped, feigning shock. "Monster, Martha, I don't know what you're talking about. I was looking for her. She must have crawled in there playing hide and seek and got stuck. Thank God you found her." The police officer stepped between us. "Sir, you need to calm down," the male officer said. "That's my daughter in there," Greg yelled, pointing a shaking finger at the pediatric doors. "I have a right to see her." "Not right now, you don't," I said, my voice low and lethal. "Look at yourself, Greg. You're not even asking if she's okay, you're just worried about being caught." He glared at me, a flash of pure hatred in his eyes, that vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that slick, injured look he was so good at. "I am worried. My wife leaves me, and now my mother-in-law is trying to steal my child. Officers, you have to help me." The police managed to escort him to a different waiting area for questioning, but he wasn't under arrest. Not yet. They had no proof he put Lily in that wall. I spent the night in a chair next to Lily's hospital bed. She was hooked up to fluids, sleeping fitfully. Even in sleep she clutched that locket. Every time a male nurse or doctor came into the room, she would whimper and try to hide under the sheets. It broke my heart to see her like that. My vibrant, happy granddaughter reduced to a terrified little ghost. What had she seen? What had she endured? In the silence of that hospital room, my mind went back over Sarah and Greg's marriage. Greg was charming, I'll give him that. He swept Sarah off her feet 5 years ago. He was a businessman, always with a new big idea, always chasing the next big deal. But the deals never seemed to pay off. Sarah was the one with the assets, the farm, the land, a small inheritance from her father. I remembered a phone call from Sarah about 2 months ago. She sounded stressed. "Mom, Greg wants to remortgage the farm again for this new tech investment." I told him no, we're barely making ends meet as it is. "Stick to your guns, honey," I had told her. "That farm is Lily's future. Don't let him gamble it away." "I won't," she had promised. I think he's been forging my signature on some loan documents, Mom. I'm going to the bank on Monday to find out the truth. If he has, I'm done. I'm kicking him out." That Monday never came. That was the week she disappeared. The realization hit me so hard. I nearly fell out of my chair. Money. It was always about money with Greg. Sarah was about to expose him to cut him off. The next morning Lily was slightly more alert. The pediatrician Dr. Evans, a kind woman with a soft voice, came in to talk to her. "Hi Lily," Dr. Evans said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Can you tell us what happened? How did you end up behind the wardrobe?" Lily just stared at her, her little knuckles white around the silver locket. "It's okay, sweetie," I said, stroking her hair. "You're safe here, Grandma is here." Lily looked at me, her big eyes swimming with tears. She opened her mouth but no sound came out. Her throat must have been so raw from crying in silence. Dr. Evans tried again. "Did someone put you in there, Lily?" Lily squeezed her eyes shut and gave a tiny jerky nod. My heart stopped. "Who put you there, baby?" I whispered. She didn't answer. She just started shaking violently. Dr. Evans gently took Lily's hand. "Lily, do you know where your mommy is? Your dad said she went on a trip." At the mention of Dad, Lily let out a sharp cry and tried to pull the blankets over her head. Okay, we won't talk about him right now," Dr. Evans said soothingly. She looked at me, her expression grave. "Martha, I think we need to get the child psychologist in here. She's terrified of men, and specifically it seems her father." Later that afternoon, the psychologist, a gentleman named Dr. Albright, sat with Lily for an hour. He just colored with her at first, not asking any questions. Slowly she started to relax a fraction. I was sitting in the corner pretending to read a magazine, my ears straining to hear every breath. "That's a beautiful house you're drawing, Lily," Dr. Albright said softly. "Is that your house?" Lily nodded. She picked up a black crayon and started scribbling aggressively over the picture of the house, crossing it out until the paper tore. "You don't like the house anymore?" he asked gently. She shook her head vigorously. "Why not, Lily?" She stopped coloring. She looked down at her hand still clutching the locket. Then in a voice that was barely a breath, she whispered something. Dr. Albright leaned in close. "I'm sorry, Lily, I didn't quite hear that. Can you tell me again?" She looked up at me, her eyes pleading for safety. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Tell him, baby, it's okay." Lily leaned toward the doctor and whispered 4 words that made the air in the room turn to ice. "Mommy is sleeping outside." Dr. Albright stayed very calm. Outside Lily started to tremble again. She looked toward the window, toward the direction of the farm miles away. "In the garden," Dr. Albright prompted gently. Lily shook her head. "In the barn," she shook her head again. Then she closed her eyes tight, as if trying to block out a horrific image, and whispered the final clue. "Daddy made Mommy sleep in the old well." The silence that followed was absolute. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. The old well. It was way out in the back pasture, a stone well that had been dry for 50 years. Sarah had always talked about filling it in, worried Lily might fall into it one day. Dr. Albright looked at me, his professional mask slipping just enough to show the horror underneath. He stood up quietly and left the room to find the detectives. I sat there paralyzed. My daughter wasn't in some other state with a new lover. She was in the ground, and my granddaughter knew it. I looked at Lily, this tiny broken little girl. She had been hidden in that wall, knowing what her father had done, terrified that she would be next. I knew then that this nightmare was far from over. Greg was still out there playing the worried husband, and once the police started digging on that farm, he would know that his lies had finally run out, and a desperate man, a man capable of doing what he did to Sarah, was capable of anything. I squeezed Lily's hand. "Don't worry, baby," I whispered fiercely. "Grandma's here, and I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again." But as I said it, a chilling thought crossed my mind. Greg was smart, he was manipulative, and he was currently free in the hospital waiting room just down the hall from the only witness to his crimes. The air in the hospital room felt thin, hard to breathe. Lily had fallen back into an exhausted, troubled sleep after her confession, clutching Sarah's locket so tightly, her knuckles were white. "Daddy made Mommy sleep in the old well." Those words echoed in my mind, a childish translation of an unspeakable horror. Dr. Albright had left the room minutes ago to relay the information to Detective Miller, the lead investigator on the case. I sat by the bed, my hand resting gently on Lily's ankle beneath the sheet, needing the physical connection to remind myself she was alive. She was safe, for now. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my neighbor Doris, who I'd asked to keep an eye on my house. Martha, that son-in-law of yours just pulled into your driveway. He's banging on your front door. What's going on? My heart jumped into my throat. Greg was looking for us. He must have realized I hadn't just taken Lily for ice cream. He was smart. He knew the moment I moved that wardrobe, his clock started ticking. I texted back, my thumbs shaking. Don't open the door, Doris. Call the police. Tell them he's dangerous. I'm at the county hospital with Lily. I had barely hit send when Detective Miller entered the room, his face grim. He motioned for me to step into the hallway. Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice low. Dr. Albright told us what Lily said about the well. You have to go there, I pleaded, grabbing his arm. You have to go to the farm right now. He killed her. I know he did. It was about money. She was going to leave him. We are already moving on it, Detective Miller assured me. I've got units heading to the farm with a cadaver dog and excavation equipment. But we need to manage Mr. Gregg. Where is he now? He was just at my house looking for me, I said, showing him the text. He knows, Detective. He knows we have Lily. Miller's jaw tightened. Okay. We need to keep him contained until we find something at the farm. If we find your daughter, we'll have enough to arrest him for murder. Right now the only thing we have is child endangerment for Lily. And he's already got a lawyer, spinning a story about an accidental hide-and-seek game. He's going to come here, I said, a cold dread washing over me. He's going to try to get to her. She's the only witness. We'll put a guard on the door, Miller said. No one gets in without my say-so. He stationed a uniformed officer outside Lily's room. I went back inside, sitting in the dark, watching the monitors beep softly. I felt like a sentinel at a castle gate, waiting for the siege. Meanwhile, out at the farm, the search was beginning. I later learned the details of that night from the police reports. When the convoy of police vehicles arrived, the farm was deserted. Greg's truck was gone. They went straight to the back pasture, spotlights cutting through the dark autumn night. The old stone well used to be covered by a rotting wooden lid. But when the officers arrived, they found something new. A heavy round slab of concrete had been placed over the opening. It looked fresh. Around the base of the well, the dirt was disturbed, and there were empty bags of quick-drying cement, crumpled near the treeline. The cadaver dog, a German shepherd named Buster, didn't even need to get close. He started barking frantically from 10 feet away, straining at his leash toward the concrete slab. That was enough for a search warrant. They brought in a backhoe to lift the slab. It took hours. They had to be careful not to damage whatever was underneath. Back at the hospital, time seemed to warp. It was past midnight now. Lily woke up crying from a nightmare, thrashing against the sheets. No, Daddy, no, don't lock it, it's dark. I held her tight, rocking her. It's okay, baby. It's just a dream. He's not here, but he was close. Around 2 a.m., the hallway outside our room went quiet. Too quiet. I got up and peered through the small glass window in the door. The uniformed officer who was supposed to be guarding us was gone. A chill ran down my spine. Where did he go? Bathroom break, vending machine. Then I saw him. At the far end of the long corridor near the elevators. Greg. He wasn't running. He was walking with a terrifying focused calm. He wore a baseball cap pulled low, and he carried a large duffel bag over his shoulder. He was looking at room numbers. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. He was here to take her, or worse, to silence her. I threw the deadbolt on the hospital room door. It made a loud clack in the silence. Greg's head snapped up. He saw me through the window. He didn't smile, he didn't look angry. He just looked empty. Like a shark, he started walking faster towards the door. Lily, honey, I whispered, rushing to the bed and pulling the call button cord out of the wall. I need you to get under the bed. Right now, just like at the farm, hide, baby. Don't make a sound no matter what happens. Lily didn't argue. The terror in my voice was enough. She slid off the mattress and scrambled under the hospital bed, curling into a tiny ball. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a metal four-pole. I stood in front of the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I am 64 years old. I have arthritis in my knees. But if that man wanted to get to my granddaughter, he was going to have to go through me first. Greg reached the door. He tried the handle, locked. He leaned close to the glass, his eyes flat and dead. "Open the door, Martha," he said. His voice was muffled through the glass, but I heard the menace in it. "I'm just here to take my daughter home." "She's not going anywhere with you," I shouted back, gripping the four-pole until my knuckles turned white. "The police are at the farm, Greg. They're digging up the well. It's over." His face didn't twitch. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're hysterical. Now open this door before I kick it in." "Try it," I yelled. "I'll scream this entire hospital down." He took a step back and rammed his shoulder into the door. The wood splintered around the lock, but it held. He did it again, harder. The door buckled inward. I started screaming. "Help! Police! Security! He's trying to kill us!" My screams echoed down the hallway. Greg slammed against the door a third time, and with a sickening crack, the deadbolt gave way. The door flew open, hitting the wall with a bang. Greg stepped inside. He looked massive in the small room. He scanned the bed, empty. His eyes darted around the room. "Where is she?" he snarled, dropping the facade of the concerned father. I stood my ground, raising the four-pole like a baseball bat. "Get out!" He lunged at me. I swung the pole with all my might. It connected with his shoulder with a loud clang, throwing him off balance. He stumbled, cursing, but he didn't fall. He grabbed the end of the pole and yanked it out of my hands, tossing it aside like a twig. He grabbed me by the front of my scrubs and shoved me hard against the wall. My head hit the drywall with a thud, and stars exploded behind my eyes. "You old hag," he spat, his face inches from mine. "You ruined everything. We could have been happy. I just needed the insurance money to fix things." He admitted it, just like that. It was always about the money. He threw me to the floor and knelt by the bed, lifting the dust ruffle. "Lily, come out here right now. We're leaving." Lily screamed then, a high-pitched wail of pure terror from under the bed. Greg reached under to grab her. I scrambled across the floor on my hands and knees and latched onto his leg, sinking my teeth into his calf through his jeans. I bit down with the desperation of a mother fighting for her young. He roared in pain and kicked backward, his boot connecting with my ribs. I gasped, rolling away, unable to breathe. He dragged Lily out from under the bed by her arm. She was kicking and screaming. "No! Grandma! Grandma!" He scooped her up, clamping a hand over her mouth to stifle her screams, and turned toward the door. But the doorway was blocked. Detective Miller stood there, his service weapon drawn and pointed straight at Greg's chest. Behind him were two hospital security guards, and the missing uniformed officer who looked pale and breathless. "Put the child down, Greg," Miller said, his voice like granite. "It's over." Greg froze. He looked from the gun to the window, calculating. "Don't even think about it," Miller said, taking a step into the room. "We found her, Greg. We opened the well." Greg seemed to shrink. The fight drained out of him. He slowly lowered Lily to the ground. She immediately scrambled away from him, crawling over to where I was lying on the floor, burying her face in my neck. The officers swarmed Greg, forcing him to the ground and cuffing his hands behind his back. As they dragged him out of the room, he didn't look at me. He didn't look at his daughter. He just stared blankly ahead, a man whose house of cards had finally collapsed. It took hours for the full story to come out. The police confirmed that they had recovered Sarah's body from the well. The medical examiner determined she had died from blunt force trauma to the head. Greg had likely struck her during an argument about the forged loan documents, then panicked. He hid her body in the well and sealed it with concrete. But Lily had seen it. She had seen him carrying her mother's body to the back pasture. To keep her quiet, he had terrified her into silence, threatening that if she told anyone, they would take her away forever. When I announced I was coming to the farm, he panicked again. He forced Lily into the crawl space he'd cut behind the wardrobe, intending to keep her hidden until I left. He never expected me to move that heavy furniture. The trial was 6 months later. It was a media circus. I sat in the front row every day holding Lily's hand. She was brave. She gave a video deposition so she wouldn't have to be in the same room as him. Seeing my little girl on that big screen, recounting the horror in her small voice, was the hardest thing I've ever had to watch. Greg's lawyer tried to paint Sarah as unstable, Tried to argue it was an accident, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged bank documents, the cement bags, the testimony of the doctor about Lily's condition. The jury only took 3 hours, guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, kidnapping, child endangerment, and fraud. The judge sentenced him to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. When the gavel came down, I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a profound aching sadness. Sarah was gone. Lily's innocence was shattered. But at least he could never hurt us again. I sold my house and moved back to the farm with Lily. We couldn't sell it, it was Sarah's legacy. We filled in the well properly this time, and planted a beautiful memorial garden over it with Sarah's favorite roses. It's been 2 years now. Lily is 9, she's doing better, lot of therapy. She still sleeps with a nightlight, and she still wears Sarah's locket every day. Sometimes I catch her staring into space, a shadow crossing her face, and I know she's back there in the dark behind that wall. But then she'll see me looking and she'll give me a small smile, and I know we're going to be okay. We are survivors, my granddaughter and I. Thank you for listening to my story today. It wasn't easy to tell, but I wanted to share it because sometimes the monsters aren't under the bed. Sometimes they are the people smiling at you across the dinner table. And sometimes when your gut tells you something is wrong, when a silence feels too heavy, you have to push back the furniture and tear down the walls to find the truth. Trust your instincts, it might just save a life. Until next time, hold your family close and stay safe.